Alright, since last week I've been informed that the doppelgangers left over from the multiverse on Supergirl all eventually died. I'm not watching it, so I'll take your word for that. But maybe that is something the writers want to stick to now that there's a brand new universe and presumably the rules are a little different. To be continued on that, but if the Arrowverse writers were going to start being consistent in any way, shape, or form at this stage of the game, I would be very surprised. Consistency is not something these hacks specialize in. Case in point, several people have mentioned in the comments that the reason Mary was able to defeat Alice in a fight last week is because Alice was in a weakened state. Oh really? Well, that's weird because in episode 4, Magpie fell off a 7-story building, but she was totally fine. In episode 7, Julia got blasted through a brick wall, hit the concrete on her back after falling 4 stories, and she didn't even need a doctor afterward. In episode 11, Kate got hit by a truck at 50 miles an hour without the protection of the Batsuit, mind you, and not only was she completely uninjured, but she was able to easily defeat Mouse and several of his thugs in hand-to-hand combat just a few minutes later. Now what do all these things have in common, you ask? Well, clowns, in every single case, simple medical logic, not to mention the f***ing laws of physics, tell us that this person should goddamn well have been in a weakened state, and that's being generous. Realistically, they should all be dead, and yet they were all in surprisingly good health. When I say that all women are indestructible on this show, I'm not being sarcastic. That is what the writers have portrayed them as. The problem, aside from that being unbelievably stupid, is that now when a woman is supposedly in a weakened state because it doesn't make any sense, because it goes against the rules of the show the writers set up and just comes off like a big plot contrivance that happens for no reason except that this is what the plot needs to happen. No consistency whatsoever. You want more examples? Well, you're in luck, because I got a bunch of them. Let's deep dive into Batwoman episode 13, Drink Me. Which kind of sounds like a sexual metaphor, but I assure you there's nothing sexy going on here. We begin with an honest-to-God heterosexual couple about to get their freak on. But before anything that might actually be fun for the CW's target demographic to watch happens, the girl takes a bite out of the guy, and then we cut to his lifeless body hanging from some rope as he's drained of all his blood. Damn, woman, when I said I was down for autoerotic asphyxiation, this is not what I meant. This is not the first time the show has teased something happening between two straight people, only for one of them to die immediately afterward. The message, in case the show is being too subtle for you, is that heterosexuality equals bad. How progressive, Batwoman writers, you must be so proud. Add that to your usual go-to white people equal bad commentary, and you've got all the makings of some bona fide fan repellent. Not sure why you'd need that though, as you've clearly been stockpiling it for the last 13 episodes. Cut to Bruce's office, where Kate, Luke, and Mary are discussing the events of the last episode. So, rather than actually follow up on last week's multiple cliffhangers, the show has chosen to either skip over them entirely, or just pretend that they didn't happen. Alice escaped off screen. Sophie, for some reason, did not arrest Luke, even though she saw him aiding and abetting Alice, and then called Crow's HQ requesting backup for an arrest. Well, that didn't happen, and Sophie apparently forgot all about it, just like she also forgot all about how Mary identified herself to the Crows right before the Crows found Alice hiding in the backseat of Mary's car, and then Mary fled the scene once Batwoman attacked the Crows, preventing them from taking these people into custody. Now, even if you think the Crows didn't identify Beth as Alice, debatable, they sure as hell identified Mary, and yet they never even bothered to arrest her or bring her in for questioning after she ran from them. We're one episode removed from that, and it's like it never even happened. They're retconning shit right and left, the episode has already completely fallen flat on its face, and this is only the second scene. This show. Anyway, they're wondering who shot Beth, but they have no leads to go on right now. Kate has absolutely zero reaction to her sister dying. If anything, she reacts even less than she does normally, and with Ruby Rose, that is really saying something. They could have had a literal plank of wood playing Kate in this scene and gotten more emotion out of it. Kate mentions that, and I quote, "Alice is back on the loose because of me." Now, at a glance, this might appear as if Kate is finally blaming herself, is finally feeling guilty about all the times that she let Alice go when she could have easily captured her, and then Alice went on to commit many horrible crimes immediately afterward, which could have been prevented if Kate had captured her like the crime fighter she's supposed to be, but it's not. Now, any guilt Kate seems to be feeling right now is 100% bullshit, as she will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt in just a few minutes. Cut to Jacob leaving the courthouse after being exonerated in his murder trial. Yeah, they just skipped over the whole trial. After making a huge deal of him being framed for Catherine's murder and building up to it for several episodes, the whole thing happened off-screen like it meant nothing. Now, granted, the whole thing was a farce to begin with because there was tons of evidence that proved Jacob was innocent, but the writers had chosen not to acknowledge any of that evidence, and the story they had presented to us is that Jacob needed the testimony of Dr. Campbell in order to prove that Mouse's ass mask technology can be a thing. But Dr. Campbell was only going along with this in the first place to get to Mouse because he was secretly Mouse's dad in disguise. So once he had captured Mouse, he'd have no reason to help Jacob anymore. But instead of actually incorporating this into the story, the writers just skipped over that too. Not to mention the big cliffhanger of Jacob being stabbed and left for dead as he bled out all over the prison floor last week. It's like that never happened either, and went right to Jacob being completely healed up, cleared of all wrongdoing, and the whole thing being written off as an afterthought. Holy shit. I talk about the women being indestructible, but Jacob needs an honorable mention, because this is the second time he's been stabbed in the gut and been 100% fine mere hours later. Did all these characters get a blood transfusion from frickin' Wolverine? What the hell is going on? So Jacob checks out Beth's body at the morgue. He just feels hollow about it, which I guess is better than feeling nothing like Kate did. Then he asks Sophie why she didn't take the shot at Beth, and she lies to him. Cut to Alice at her brand new hideout. I don't know why she didn't just go back to the old one. It's not like Kate knowing where to find her means a damn thing at this point. One of her thugs comes in and tells her that they couldn't find Mouse because he is no longer at the hospital, because Mouse's dad somehow smuggled him past the armed guards stationed right outside his room and out of the building that would have had lots of security cameras all over the place. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Back in Bruce's office, Luke gives Kate Beth's necklace. I guess he thinks it might make her feel better about her sister dying, but it's really not necessary because Kate seems like she's over it already. She does briefly express regret that Beth died and that they can't bring her killer to justice right now, but mere moments later, she's smiling, joking around, and making cute remarks about how the villain of the week has a stupid name. Nocturna, ha ha ha, that's a dumb name for a bad guy, but hey, I always wanted to catch a vampire, so let's do that. Batwoman, away! Any actual grief Kate might have felt about Beth being murdered a matter of hours ago has instantly been forgotten about. She dwells on this for all of 30 seconds, doesn't have any reaction to it whatsoever. She gets over Beth's death so goddamn fast, it makes me wonder why the writers even bothered killing her off. You'd think the death of the woman who represented Kate's second chance to save her sister and come to terms with the event that supposedly haunted her for half her life would have been a bigger deal, would have had some kind of impact on this woman, but there's nothing. Kate just resets back to zero and we move on. I shit you not, the one and only character who has an actual honest reaction to Beth's death in this episode is Alice. Sure, her reaction is centered on how Kate was going to save Beth and let her die, but that's more of a reaction than we got from anyone else. At least the writers actually explored how Alice feels about this situation. They never even tried to do that with Kate. So, in a weird way, Alice, the villain who tried to kill Beth last week, lest we forget, comes out of this looking like the sympathetic one, while Kate, the hero, looks like a heartless, unfeeling bitch! Oh, is that being too harsh? Am I being too hard on Kate? Hold that thought. Cut to Batwoman doing detective work. And by detective work, I mean she's literally killing time hanging out on some random rooftop looking bored as hell, just waiting for something to happen. Detective work. She hears a woman scream, and she finds Nocturna's latest victim tied up in a warehouse. Nocturna shows up, and they fight while having sexually suggestive banter, because if you didn't know, every woman is a lesbian. Too bad none of them have any chemistry. And since Nocturna has a vampire gimmick, she bites Batwoman in the neck, and she passes out. Then, instead of actually doing something about this, like, oh, I don't know, killing Batwoman while she's helpless or taking the cowl off to see what her secret identity is. You know, something a smart criminal might do in this situation. She just ties Batwoman up and leaves her there completely unharmed because if she did any of those smart things, the rest of the episode couldn't happen. Batwoman wakes up and Luke says that she was injected with a paralytic, so he's going to give her an adrenaline shot to counteract it. Why didn't he give her the adrenaline shot the second she was knocked unconscious? Why did he wait several minutes during which time Kate was helpless and Nocturna could have easily killed her if she wanted? Because it wasn't in the script until now. Then Sophie shows up because the plot says so, and instead of arresting Batwoman for attacking people under her command and helping several suspects, including a woman who may or may not have been Alice, escape capture last week, Sophie just cuts the ropes off and they have sexual tension. Or rather, they have whatever you'd call it when you bang two planks of wood together while making kissing noises. Trust me, there's nothing hot about this. Being hot requires having actual chemistry, and there's still none to be found here. So Batwoman doesn't try to apprehend Sophie for all the laws she herself acknowledged that Sophie was breaking last week, and Sophie doesn't try to arrest Batwoman for the laws she broke last week. She just says, "Next time I'll have to bring you in." Yeah, next time. So, her attacking your people and helping suspects escape last week meant absolutely nothing. Good to know. You. Then the other crows show up and Batwoman bugs out. Cut to the illegal underground abortion clinic where Kate is having Mary test her blood. If it were me, I'd want to do that at a real hospital with an actual doctor. If there's anything special about that paralytic second-year med student Mary isn't qualified to deal with it. But who needs a silly thing like logic, right? Mary thinks Kate's symptoms might just be a manifestation of Kate's guilt for choosing Beth over Alice. There's that word again. Guilt. I wonder where this is going. Kate reaffirms her ironclad belief that Beth was the one who deserved to live, so she's not tortured or bothered or even perturbed about her decision to let Alice die last week. No need to dwell on that whatsoever because character development is for losers. Then Mary finds ketamine in Kate's blood, which is an animal tranquilizer or something, but Kate is evasive and f***s out of there real fast when Mary starts asking questions. And because Mary knows Kate personally and is going to start connecting the dots pretty soon because of this, Kate getting her blood tested at a hospital with a doctor she doesn't know was the only sane thing to do in this situation, so of course she had to do the exact opposite. Cut to the Batcave, where Luke decides to look for clues by using a blacklight, which he tries to make sound a lot more science-y than that, and shining it on the Batsuit. And when he doesn't find anything, Kate is like, "F*** it, let's throw a party." Back at Crow's HQ, Jacob is picking up right where he left off, as if the whole being framed for his wife's murder plot was nothing but a massive waste of time. He says a bunch of words that basically translate to him challenging Batwoman to a dick measuring contest, and wants them to find Nocturna before Batwoman does, so they can remind the people of Gotham City what real authority looks like. Suck it, GCPD! Also, Kate is having the grand opening of her gay bar several weeks early because Nocturna's been targeting clubgoers and Kate wants to use her customers as bait. Cut to the party in full swing with Kate and Luke in the back room running facial recognition scans on everyone who enters the building, but any actual detective work gets a monkey wrench thrown into it when Sophie shows up and Luke is like, "Damn, Kate, look how hot your ex-girlfriend is." Now, Luke does confirm here that him and Sophie have never actually met in person. She doesn't know who he is, so that explains why the Crows haven't paid Wayne Enterprises a visit to arrest their head of security for aiding and abetting public enemy number 1 last week. But it doesn't explain why the Crows haven't been searching for a man who fits Luke's description since then. Just like with most of the events of the last episode, that too has been completely forgotten about. Speaking of which, Mary walks right up to Sophie and starts a conversation. And even though in the previous episode Mary identified herself to the Crows at a checkpoint, had Alice, or at the very least a suspicious woman hiding in the backseat of her car, and then ran from the Crows after Batwoman attacked them, even though this happened on Sophie's watch, even though any self-respecting law enforcement officer who's even remotely competent would try to apprehend Mary for such things, Sophie doesn't try to arrest her, doesn't have any questions for her, it's like the whole goddamn thing never happened. So that's another retcon to add to the pile. How many are we up to now? I can't even keep track anymore. Sophie isn't interested in talking to Mary and says she's working. Well, obviously not, because if you were, you'd be arresting Mary right now, you f***ing dingbat. But she forgets all about work when she sees a hot woman named Elle at 12 o'clock who starts flirting with her. Oh, so I guess it takes a hot white woman to get your motor running, eh, Sophie? So Mary, the woman of color, just didn't do it for you, did she? I think Sophie's racist. Luke IDs Elle as someone with a criminal record and easy access to ketamine through her job, so she's suspect number 1, meaning that Sophie could be in danger here. But Kate doesn't want to go out there to save Sophie from potentially getting killed because she's too afraid of looking like Sophie's jealous ex. Yeah, Kate's priorities are a little screwed up. So Luke basically has to prod Kate into going out there to save Sophie's life because Kate is a despicable excuse for a human being, and she interrupts Sophie and Elle while they're in the middle of a scintillating discussion about how hot Batwoman looks in black leather. Of course. Elle also points out that Batwoman skirts the law and lacks accountability, and she's not wrong, but if you think Sophie gives one single shit about either of those things, you don't know what show you're watching. Then Sophie gets called into work and has to leave. Meanwhile, Luke pretends to be Mary's boyfriend to get her away from some woman he thinks also might be Nocturna. Mary has questions about this, and also why Luke is wearing an earpiece with a direct line to Kate, but he nopes out of there before she can inquire any further. Back in their makeshift command center, Kate sees Alice staring directly into a security camera outside the building, and immediately abandons their search for Nocturna, even though they have a suspect they thought was Nocturna just sitting there at the bar, to go talk to her. And I mean that. She just goes to talk to her. Only to talk. Alice wants to know where Mouse is. Kate has no idea. She explains why she saved Beth instead of Alice and says that since everybody thinks she's dead now, Alice can start over. You know, because Alice going to prison for her many horrible crimes is not an option. And if you didn't know what that means, well, you'll never guess it in a million years, so I'll give you a hint. Remember last week when I said this? So this business of Kate letting Alice go without trying to apprehend her, I expect it's going to keep happening. Now, she might try to bring Alice in once in a while like she did in episode 10, but ultimately, she's always going to revert to form. Kate is going to keep letting Alice go. And no matter how many people Alice kills or maims or kidnaps or frames for murder, because the writers want their precious LGBT female hero to be infallible, they will never let it be viewed as Kate's fault for not capturing Alice when she had the chance. And because of that, Kate will never actually learn anything from this. So her character can't grow or evolve. It's just going to be trapped in this maddening static state of unbridled arrogance and zero accountability. Well, guess what? She did it again. She let Alice walk away. Just a few minutes ago, she was blaming herself for letting Alice go free when she could have easily captured her, supposedly felt guilty for allowing this incredibly dangerous criminal to be back on the streets, and now here she is just a few scenes later, letting Alice go without trying to apprehend her yet another time. My God. I need a meme or an alarm or something to play when this happens, because it happens so goddamn frequently now. I feel like the viewers of this show are going to become numb to it if I don't constantly remind them that this is, in fact, not a good thing. So, yeah, when Kate expressed guilt about Alice being free in that earlier scene, that was a lie. Kate feels no guilt about that, because feeling guilt would require Kate admitting that she's done something wrong, which would require the writers allowing Kate to be taken off the pedestal they put her on long enough for her to be an actual human being with actual flaws and failings like everyone else. But they don't want to do that. They only want Kate to be their super awesome, perfect feminist LGB paragon of amazingness who never does anything that the show acknowledges as a mistake, which I explained last week means that Kate is going to keep making the same mistakes over and over without ever actually learning anything. In order for Kate to actually learn from her mistakes, the show would have to point out that she has let Alice go when she could have easily captured her God knows how many times now, and a lot of people are dead because of it, which on a competently written show would make Kate the worst crime fighter imaginable, not to mention an absolutely terrible person. But they're not going to do that either. They've come too far now. They're just going to stick their heads in the sand and continue pretending that Kate constantly letting Alice go is not a problem, which means that it's just going to continue to be a problem. It's horrible. Just horrible. It turns Batwoman, who did have potential before this whole clown show began, into an absolutely despicable piece of garbage who is forever trapped in this static prison that forces her to remain a one-dimensional caricature instead of allowing her to evolve into an actual fleshed-out complex person. And the writers think they're the champions of social justice by making the show this way, but the truth is, they're the biggest villains of all, because they've taken what could have been a great LGBT character and superhero, and in their shallow, ill-conceived attempts to make Kate as perfect as possible, all they've accomplished is making it impossible for her to be either one. Cut to Alice's hideout. She's monologuing to a mannequin about how she was wrong to think she could win Kate back because Kate let her die. Then Nocturna shows up and attacks her. Cut back to Kate and Luke checking out more suspects at the bar. So apparently they don't think Elle is Nocturna anymore for some reason. I'm not really sure why. And because even soy boy Luke is fed up with how ridiculous this is getting now, he wants to talk to Kate about why she let Alice go again. And she immediately throws this back in his face because he had the audacity to actually call the police to arrest the wanted murderer who was hanging out in the alley. Because in Kate's mind, Luke is the one who did something wrong here. And then the needle on the retcon meter doesn't just break off, but explodes, as the writers retcon something that happened less than 5 minutes ago, when Kate says that any hope she had for Alice is gone. So that scene we just saw where Kate told Alice that she could start over? Yeah, that never happened. Forget that shit. Because now Kate has no hope for Alice at all. Did no one even proofread this script before they shot it? This is pathetic! Kate says one thing and then immediately contradicts it like it never happened. The writers aren't even paying attention to what they write. They can't even keep continuity from one scene to the next anymore. And yet, somehow, some way, the mainstream shill critics continue to defend this garbage. So I guess it's not just the stupid characters on this stupid show who can't remember when stupid shit happens, is it? So Kate and Luke identify a new suspect and they go after her, and this leads Kate to a warehouse where she finds Alice all tied up. She could apprehend Alice at this point, but she doesn't. Again. Instead, she sets Alice free. Again. She unties Alice, but gets suspicious because Nocturna was draining Alice's blood but stopped halfway through. She thinks Alice is hiding something, then figures out that Nocturna is hiding at a cathedral because the rope she used is also used in cathedrals or something, and Kate knows exactly which cathedral to go to because magic. Cut back to Mary leaving the bar, and she gets attacked by Nocturna. Back at Crow's headquarters, Jacob asks Sophie if she's ever helped Batwoman or if Batwoman has ever helped her. Sophie lies and says no, even though it's common knowledge that Batwoman saved Sophie from Alice in the pilot. I guess she was hoping the writers retconned that too. Then he shows her security camera footage another Crow gave him of Sophie untying Batwoman and letting her escape, so she couldn't be busted any harder if she walked into Jacob's office with her pants on fire. Cut to the cathedral where Batwoman finds Mary having the last of her blood drained. She fights Nocturna, Nocturna gets the upper hand, but then Alice takes her out. Kate brought Alice with her because the plot says so. Then Nocturna grabs Mary's blood and takes off. And since Mary has lost too much blood to live apparently, Alice tells Batwoman to go after Nocturna while she gives Mary a transfusion. Even though Mary left her to die last week, even though Alice was just drained of a lot of her own blood and this would probably be very dangerous for her, she's giving Mary her blood out of the goodness of her heart, damn it. Because that's totally in character for Alice, right? Yeah, this sounds like something she'd do. So Batwoman catches up to Nocturna and she's like, for the record, killing people? Not sexy. Well, you would know, wouldn't you, Kate? Hey, remember when you killed Bruce? I only ask because that's another thing that the writers have completely forgotten about, and I was just wondering if you knew if that was still a thing or not. So they fight again, Batwoman beats her by shining that black light on her and burning her face, and that's that. And back at Crow's HQ, Sophie is trying to martyr herself, whining about how while Jacob was locked up, they turned the city into a police state and had no accountability. Yeah, exactly. The Crows were breaking the law. A lot. And yet, for some reason, no one, including the actual police, were doing anything to stop them. Now, if Sophie feels bad about that, I would suggest that she turn herself over to the police and confess to all the crimes the Crows committed under her command, but I think we all know that's not going to happen. Then she says that the Crows can use Batwoman, but I call bullshit on that even faster than Jacob does, because Batwoman openly acknowledged that the Crows were breaking the law last week, and she didn't do a damn thing to stop them either, so clearly if there's a way for the Crows to get on a better path, Batwoman is not the answer. Jacob's heard enough, he doesn't trust Sophie anymore, and he suspends her. Thank you. Also, Batwoman calls and tells Sophie where to find Nocturna. Cut back to the illegal underground abortion clinic, because that's where Batwoman took Mary, even though there are no medical staff of any kind to make sure Mary's okay after her heart stopped due to massive blood loss instead of an actual hospital. Mary says Nocturna came after her because her blood is a magic deus ex machina now and it can cure the disease that makes Nocturna have to drink other people's blood to stay alive. So Kate puts two and two together, and obviously Alice pointed Nocturna at Mary to save herself. So Kate pays a visit to Alice at her new hideout. How did she know where Alice was hiding now? Never explained. She just knows where Alice is because the plot says so. They have a little chat. Alice is still really bothered that Kate was going to let her die last week, and I'm quoting Kate's exact response word for word here. If you want me to feel guilty, I don't. I never will. Not after everything you've done. Really, Kate? Really? I think that's pretty despicable, actually. Because nearly all the horrible things Alice has done since this show began only happened because you allowed them to happen by not apprehending Alice any of the times that you could have easily done so, up to and including this one. But still, after all those crimes, all the murders and maimings and arsons and so on, crimes that Kate could have easily prevented but chose not to, after all that, Kate still feels no guilt and no remorse. Like a psychopath. So here Kate is, face to face with a batshit crazy murdering lunatic, and Alice looks like the sane one by comparison. So to Kate Kane, I pose this question. Alice does terrible things because she's a mentally ill trauma victim. What's your excuse? Anyway, Alice saved Mary's life to prove how stupid Kate was for letting her die, and Kate thinks she was stupid for ever thinking that Alice was redeemable and convincing the Crows not to kill her. Yeah, when she stopped the Crows from committing murder instead of arresting Alice in accordance with the law, Kate thinks that was stupid. The smart thing would have been to murder Alice. Because that's what Bruce would have done, right, Kate? Wait a minute. You know, it wasn't that long ago that Kate promised Kara that she would never lose hope like Bruce did. And now here she is just a few weeks later having lost hope. And something tells me that the irony is completely lost on not only her, but the writers. If this turns out to be by design rather than a complete fluke, I will be stunned. I'll bet you anything that this was just more discontinuity. I highly doubt that line she said to Kara will ever even be referenced when it comes to this. Because that would mean that our super awesome, amazing LGBT female hero is fallible, and thus less than perfect. And well, we can't have that now, can we? Alice admits that she doesn't want Kate to give up on her. It's a rare moment of vulnerability and honesty, the likes of which Kate has proven to be completely incapable of, and stuff like this is the reason why Alice is so much more likable than Kate could ever hope to be, despite being the villain of the show. Then Kate leaves without trying to apprehend Alice again. For God's sake! Kate just gave this whole speech about how she was stupid for believing that there was still good in Alice, for believing that Alice was in any way redeemable, and then she immediately goes back on it by not trying to recapture her. So Kate doesn't think Alice is redeemable anymore, but she still won't bring Alice to justice. It's the same mistake over and over. It's a cycle that just keeps repeating itself like a broken fucking record. Alice keeps committing horrible crimes, and Kate keeps letting her go. Rinse, repeat. Writing like this makes me wish that I could invent a time machine so I could go back in time and talk Dante into writing a 10th circle of hell because the first 9 circles are too good for the writers of this trash. Then one of Alice's thugs walks in with a file on Dr. Campbell. Alice takes a look at it and figures out that Campbell is actually Mouse's dad. And I hope to God that she puts that cartoon character villain out of my misery in the next episode, because him still being a thing is doing this show no favors. Cut back to the illegal underground abortion clinic, where Mary has the news on, and the news lady talks about how Nocturna injected ketamine into her victims. So the wheels start turning in Mary's head. She looks at that magazine cover Batwoman posed for, and she's like, you know, Batwoman's jawline kind of looks like Kate's jawline. Hey, wait a minute! See, Kate, this is why you don't do stupid shit like posing for photo shoots in magazines when you're trying to keep a secret identity. Because you make it really easy for people to figure out who you are. The only surprising thing about this is that Mary figured out that Kate, Kane, and Batwoman are the same person before every criminal in the goddamn city did. Cut to Batwoman meeting Sophie because Sophie lit up the bat signal, which of course draws zero attention from the police and the press and everyone else. Sophie says that her boss found out they've been working together, which is absolutely not what they've been doing, but that's just one last retcon in an episode full of them. Then Sophie admits all the problems she's been having lately, and I get pissed off because she's not admitting these things to the police in the form of a signed confession. More boring shit from these two. They have so little chemistry they might as well walk up to Barry and Iris and say, "Hold our beers," and then they make out. Then f***a-doodle-doo, I couldn't possibly care less. Both these characters can rot in hell as far as I'm concerned. That was episode 13. Holy shit. The show is going to be off for another week or two now. And thank Christ for that, because I feel like I need to be sandblasted after watching this one. I was on the fence for a while, but this episode finally clinched it. I think Batwoman is the worst written TV show I have ever seen. This was reprehensibly awful. I have no idea how something this bad could even be suggested in the writer's room, much less actually written, filmed, edited, and aired. This episode made me physically sick. A few episodes back, I had to literally stick my head in a toilet, and I felt more sick watching this one. These writers should be ashamed of themselves. They have created a character in Kate Kane who is so loathsome, I can't even stand the sight of her anymore. And she's supposed to be the hero. On a show filled to the brim with shallow, vacuous, mean-spirited, selfish, inconsistent, unsympathetic, hateful, spiteful, hypocritical dipshits, the one and only character that I don't want to see burn in eternal hellfire at this point is the fucking villain. And you know why? Because Alice has no illusions about who she is. She's not pretending to be something she isn't. She's a bad person, but one whose flaws are actually acknowledged as flaws and used to make her more complex. And on the other side of that coin, you have Kate, who is a horrible person, who is nothing but flaws, but the show refuses to acknowledge any of them, so the writers can continue with this bullshit facade of Kate being perfect all the time, so the result is that Kate comes off like this self-righteous hypocrite who pretends to be a hero, has everyone constantly kissing her ass and calling her a hero, even though she routinely acts like the worst person in the world. I mean, this is like if Walter White came out to the public as Heisenberg, got everyone in town overdosed on meth, murdered his whole family with a butcher knife, and then instead of arresting him, Hank threw a parade in his honor and then gave him the key to the fucking city. Kate is just vile as a character. In an episode jam-packed with stuff that made me want to put my fist through the goddamn TV screen, she was far and away the worst thing in it. And I don't say that lightly, because this episode was an absolute disgrace. From minute one, it's as if the writers just threw up their hands and went, screw it, we don't give a shit anymore. There's so much baffling discontinuity with the last episode and from scene to scene in this episode that I honestly question if they even had a script for this one. Because it feels like they just slapped a whole bunch of random scenes together and threw them on the air. Everything's getting retconned, nothing f***ing matters. But at the end of the day, even with all that shit happening, it's almost hard to muster up any genuine vitriol for it, because Kate is still standing there at the head of the pack being... I mean, if there's a worse character in this entire era of television and pop culture in general, I don't know what it is. Beat for beat, Barry Allen still tops her in terms of the sheer number of innocent lives he's put in danger, but I honestly think that Kate is more detestable at this point. She pretends to be a hero, demands to be treated like a hero, but she is the most despicable person you've ever seen. She acts like she couldn't care less about her sister being murdered. She pretends to blame herself for the infamous killer Alice being free, proceeds to let Alice go free when she could easily capture her 3 times in one episode, and then states clear as day that she feels no guilt about Alice, even though if she had apprehended Alice when she had the chance earlier in the episode, Alice would not have been able to sick Nocturna on Mary and nearly get Mary killed. Kate could have prevented that from ever happening, but she didn't. And she doesn't care. Because Kate cares about nothing and no one except herself. She acknowledges that the Crows have been breaking the law, but she doesn't do anything to stop them because she wants to bang Sophie. But apparently there's a lot of that going around because the GCPD weren't doing shit to stop the Crows either, even though they were making no secret of their numerous public unlawful activities. Not only that, but Kate actually has the balls to give Luke a hard time when he did the right thing and called the police to come and arrest Alice because he obviously knew that Kate wasn't going to lift a finger to do it. So now Kate, the supposed hero and crime fighter, is actually opposed to the idea of the police arresting criminals. Because even though Kate now believes that there's nothing redeemable about Alice, she still doesn't want Alice to be brought to justice. She knows where Alice is, could apprehend her anytime she wants, but she doesn't. She still wants Alice to be free because she doesn't care if Alice continues killing innocent people, and she refuses to bring Sophie to justice because she wants to get her rocks off. Kate is indefensible. She started out bad and has only gotten worse. This is the worst character on television. This is the worst show on television. And yet all I see from professional critics is them singing its praises. I read 5 different reviews of this episode before turning off my computer in complete disgust, and every single one of them was just glowing. 2 of these reviews gave the episode 4 stars. I don't know what show they were watching, but if any of these ass clowns ever feel like putting their political agendas aside and joining the rest of us in the real world, they may find that they're not welcome here anymore. This episode was an abomination. The worst of the worst. Burn it with fire, burn it with hellfire, burn it with anything you've got. I don't care. Just get it the hell away from me. This show. I've reviewed every episode. If you enjoyed this review, there's a playlist on the channel. Ding that bell icon and follow me on Twitter using the link in the description so you'll always be notified about new videos. Please leave a comment and give it a like. Share the video around because the YouTube algorithm has just been relentless lately. Subscribe to the channel, and if you're already subscribed, for God's sake, make sure you're still subscribed. I've been getting a lot of messages lately from people saying that they were unsubscribed without even realizing it. So always make sure. That's all I got for now. I'll see you when I see you.